you. Priti Patel.
Thank you. And it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mrs McDonough. And I want to congratulate my friend, the Honourable Member for Stroud, for organising this debate today, but also my friend from North Devon, and there's going to be a lot of overlap, there's no doubt, in various comments today, but she has just spoken very powerfully about the need for local representation, and quite frankly, where planning blights so much of the agenda for renewable energy and energy efficiency. And I say this within the context that our country has made tremendous progress over the last decade when it comes to that transition to more renewable energy. And there's a whole new raft out there in terms of innovation, technology. We are leading the curve. And, you know, I also pay tribute to many of our former energy ministers that have led what has been quite a tackling issue for the last decade. As our energy grid is being weaned off fossil fuels, renewable energy accounted for almost 43% of electricity generation in 2020, which represents a very, very significant increase from 14.6% in 2013 and 2% back in 1991. So this country is leading the way, and I don't think, even in the confines of this debate, anyone should overlook what has been achieved. And it's welcome, and it's right that we as a nation are moving in the right direction, as well as looking at options. I say this as a Member of Parliament for the East of England, options for nuclear energy, small-scale nuclear projects in particular. We have Bradwell site not far out of my constituency, where we're looking at all sorts of options there, but also incorporating more energy efficient saving measures, as well as small-scale solar, which my friend, the member for Stroud, has spoken about in a very dynamic way around the flexibilities that are needed there. But with innovation and technology, which we should always encourage, and I have to say support as a government through various economic means, we should be looking at the planning implications of what all this means and how this can be practically delivered for our fantastic country. Now, I have many, many constituents, as we all do, who are deeply frustrated with the planning process. And I could speak for hours about the planning process, as I have 2 district councils, 1 city council, a county council, a town council, and various parish councils as well. Of course, I will contextualise my remarks. But the point about the planning process is that when constituents are trying to do the right thing, and my friend, the member for Stroud, has alluded to this, when they want to invest in measures, the right measures for renewable, such as double glazing, for example, or renovation works, planning actually prevents them from doing so, particularly in conservation areas. I have a number of conservation areas where bureaucratic hurdles make these changes to well-designed UPVC windows, which are sympathetic to conservation areas, just completely refused because of rigid policies. Now, I've raised this matter with ministers for a long time, particularly when it comes to the focus on infrastructure. But there is a clear message here that planning policies have to adapt when innovation and technology around renewables is adapting, because the case is this is good for the environment, but our planning processes are just too rigid. And then when it comes to larger infrastructure projects, which my friend for North Devon has just alluded to, this summer the Windsor Review into electricity networks was published, and there were a raft of recommendations, many of which were interesting, including those relating to the standardisation of equipment, developing the supply chain and ensuring that appropriate jobs, skills and training are in place. No one will disagree with any of that whatsoever. We need it all because we believe in being innovators and pioneers in this space. But there were also recommendations covering strategic spatial planning and the methods by which local locations for infrastructure are determined. Now, this is important as the public need to be aware of the full impact of new energy infrastructure covering locations where it's generated and infrastructure to connect it to the grid and where the energy is needed for use. Now, in theory, this is all very nice because if you apply the benefits in the right way, then everyone should benefit. However, the review has caused a lot of concern and anxiety to communities across the country, and certainly in the East of England. And I speak for many of my colleagues in the East of England, not just in Essex, but also Norfolk and Suffolk on this. And the Minister will be familiar with the Great Grid Upgrade plans for the new transmission infrastructure between Norwich and Tilbury, as it's now being rebranded. And these plans will lead to 100 miles of overhead power lines and cables, so in layman's terms that's pylons, being erected across the countryside of the east of England, including my constituency. The National Grid are putting forward these plans because new offshore wind energy is being generated off the east of England, all of which was set up nearly 10 years ago, and we're very proud of that offshore energy grid, the energy coastline